Maverick News presents The Rick Walker Show. Defrag your mind.
Hello, Maverick family, new viewers. Welcome back to the Maverick News Channel. I am back in Canada, following about a week away in Costa Rica. And it is great to be home and back in the studio with you guys tonight. Starting at 7 p.m. again, though, because I was up pretty much all night driving and flying and driving. From there back to here, and I have a tale to tell you about inflation. It's related to the trip down to Costa Rica. It's related to Budget Day today here in Canada, where Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, and his Deputy Prime Minister / Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland are hiking taxes in the newest budget, even as protests to axe the tax continue in various locations across the nation. Plus, Israel still vowing to respond to the unprecedented drone and missile attack that we saw. An attack that did, in fact, involve hypersonic missiles. We'll tell you why that's very destabilizing. And what else do we have for you tonight? Well, with all that going on, you would think that the focus would be on just that, the destabilization of the geopolitical environment and the risk of a full-blown kinetic Third World War. And yet, the mainstream media, not really terribly focused on it tonight. They're looking at other things. The reality TV show that we're calling these days the presidential election, and other such things. We'll get into all of it when we come back on the other side of this.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Okay, also I should tell you that tonight in Toronto, we are seeing pro-Palestinian protests ramp up. They are blocking railroad tracks. Cops are on scene. We will try to keep you posted on that as the broadcast continues. You're also seeing increased protest activity on the U.S. side of the border as well, with pro-Palestinian activists. Similar kinds of incidents going on down there. Blocking traffic. We saw them block a bridge. Was it yesterday? I'm losing track of my days because of all the traveling that I've done in the last 48 hours getting home. And what an experience it was coming through the airport and customs getting back. I'm going to tell you about that tonight. But first of all, let's talk about this federal budget. You have going on in Canada right now freedom fighters protesting axe the tax. They've sort of grabbed a hold of that Pierre Poilievre Conservative Party of Canada slogan. They've kind of stolen it or used it, or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe it's the Conservatives taking over the freedom movement. I don't know which it is. Either way, they're out there. They've been out there now for, I believe, 16 days approximately, 15 or 16 days, over 2 weeks, protesting, saying, axe the tax, axe the tax. Over here, over there, you have Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, also yelling, axe the tax, axe the tax. And here comes the budget. And what do we get? Tax increases. Chrystia Freeland, the Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, serving a dual role, she is trying to buy votes. Her and Justin Trudeau, going after especially younger Canadians, highlighting in many speeches all the problems that honestly the government has created over 8 years of fiscal mismanagement, in my view, and the view of many others, and now responding with a budget where they're going to spend even more money. Much of it aimed at tackling this housing crisis, which I believe the government created, with massive immigration, too much regulation on the housing industry, massive money printing resulting in massive inflation, and an inability to wrestle that to control with the traditional method of using higher interest rates. For they've really got stagflation going on. That's a whole other element to this. But tonight, they still have no projected budget balance in sight. They have even bigger deficits forecast every year ahead than previously projected, now because of this new budget. And this budget, they're calling it Fairness for Every Generation. And they're going to spend an unprecedented amount of money. Overall, the 2024 federal budget includes $52.9 billion in new spending. Some of that is loan-based, and it's reliant on provincial buy-in, as well as an additional estimated $20 billion in new tax revenue, which is going to come from tobacco, vaping, sin taxes, and of course that carbon tax that's still out there. So they're going to rake in a whole lot of additional tax revenue, $20 billion in new tax revenue, while people are out on the streets protesting, literally on the sides of highways, protesting, axe the tax, axe the tax, not listening. So here comes the budget today. And they've increased spending. They're increasing taxes. That's what liberals are known for. Tax and spend. Tax and spend. We've seen unprecedented amounts of money printing, unprecedented levels of spending, unprecedented levels of foreign aid going out, unprecedented budget deficits. In fact, more debt incurred over the life of this Trudeau liberal / NDP government than all other previous governments combined. Let's go to the House of, let's go to Ottawa and listen to what Chrystia Freeland, the Deputy Prime Minister, has to say about this tonight. Here we go. Here's the Deputy PM and Finance Minister. Oh, hang on a second. I need to queue up this. I need to get it on the screen for you, don't I? That would help. Here she is. Chrystia Freeland, Finance Minister, on today's budget.
A fairer future.
To build a fairer future for younger Canadians, she says.
We need to make sure our tax system is fairer too. In Canada and around the world, the 21st century winner-takes-all economy is making those at the very top richer, while too many middle-class Canadians are struggling just to avoid falling behind. The job of our tax system is to lean against this structural inequality, to fund investments in the middle class, especially in young Canadians, by asking those who are benefiting from the winner-takes-all economy to pay a little bit more. Today, our tax system doesn't do that. Today, it is possible for a nurse or a carpenter to pay tax at a higher marginal rate than a multi-millionaire. That's not fair. That must change, and it will. Our government is raising the inclusion rate to 2/3 on annual capital gains above $250,000 for individuals. This new revenue will help make life cost less for millions of Canadians, particularly millennials and Gen Z. It will help fund our efforts to turbocharge the building of more homes. It will support investments in growth and productivity that will pay dividends for years to come. So, who will pay more? Well, Mr. Speaker, most Canadians have no capital gains in a typical year, so they won't pay more. The first $250,000 in capital gains every single year enjoyed by each individual Canadian will be taxed at the current rate. Individual Canadians enjoying this substantial annual gain won't pay a penny more. The lifetime capital gains exemption, an amount fully exempt from taxation, will be raised to $1.25 million. And this change will not, of course, apply to the sale of Canadians' principal residence, which is and will remain fully exempt from the tax on capital gains. Only 0.13% of Canadians with an average annual income of $1.4 million will pay more on their capital gains. For 99.87% of Canadians, personal income taxes on capital gains will not increase. Taxing capital gains is not an inherently partisan idea. It is an idea that everyone who cares about fairness should support. In fact, the idea of taxing capital gains in Canada was first broached by the government of Prime Minister John Diefenbaker and his Royal Commission on Taxation, chaired by Kenneth Carter. And Prime Minister Brian Mulroney raised the capital gains inclusion rate to 75%, higher than the rate we're establishing today.
Yep. Gulp.
Yet, I know, there will be many voices raised in protest. No one likes paying more tax.
No kidding.
Even, or perhaps particularly, those who can afford it the most. But before they complain too bitterly, I'd like to ask Canada's 1%, Canada's 0.1%, to consider this. What kind of country do you want to live in?
A free one, preferably.
Do you want to live in a country where you can tell the size of someone's paycheck by their smile? Do you want to live in a country where kids go to school hungry? Do you want to live in a country where a teenage girl gets pregnant because she doesn't have the money to buy birth control? Do you want to live in a country where the only young Canadians who can buy their own homes are those with parents who can help with the down payment? Do you want to live in a country where we make the investments we need in healthcare, in housing, in old age pensions, but we lack the political will to pay for them?
You know what? I want to live in a country where the government gets out of the way and lets the market work, so that instead of focusing on a higher minimum wage for everyone, I want to get everyone the maximum wage. All right? I want to get everyone as much money as they can possibly make. I want businesses to make lots of money so that the people working for those businesses can make lots of money. I want lots of growth. I want a growing economy with low deficits. I want less government spending. I want less foreign aid going out. I want less money spent on wars and weapons. I want lower taxes so that people have more money in their pockets. I want lower prices at the gas pump so that people can afford to go on vacations. I want lower taxes so people can afford to buy the things that they need for their families. I want less money printing so there's less inflation. So that when you go to the grocery store, you can afford to buy food. I want less social engineering controlled by government and a more affluent, prosperous economy where more people are raised up by a higher standard of living, so that the government doesn't need to worry about whether a young teenage girl has enough money to buy birth control, because she just will. Because the whole family will have the means to buy the things that it needs to survive. And will be less reliant on government, so that kids don't go to school hungry because the families are affluent enough to buy groceries. So that you don't need more government programs with more government spending, where the government is feeding your kid breakfast at school because you don't have enough money to buy groceries. The government's got it upside down and backwards. They don't understand clearly how economics work. They want to control everything. They want to control every aspect of your life. They want to control the economy. They think that they're the ones responsible for everything, that they should be responsible for everything, especially you. And they want to control you that way. That's my view. That's what this budget is all about. How does a higher capital gains tax get us more houses built at a time when we have a housing crisis and still mass immigration happening, so that we can't house the new people who are coming in, let alone the people who are already here? And we've seen housing prices double as a result of this economic reality, where we've got declining supply, relatively speaking, and increasing demand. That then, what do you get when you have less supply relative to the amount of demand? You get higher prices. Obviously, you have an economic problem on your hands when you've more than doubled the cost of a home, and you've stripped from young people the prospect, the dream of home ownership from an entire generation, where most young people today don't think they can ever afford to buy a new home. So what are they coming up with? A renter's bill of rights. That's renting. They've incorporated a renter's bill of rights into the budget, thinking that's going to help solve the housing crisis for home ownership. But that's not focused on home ownership. That's focused on renting. And this whole idea of helping people build a better credit rating, I mean, there's nothing new in here that we haven't heard over the last few weeks. You know what is new? More spending. You know what that tells me? It tells me that an election is not that far away. When the government ramps up spending, it's usually because they're out there trying to buy votes. That's what Justin Trudeau is trying to do here. He's softening everybody up, getting people ready for an election, cranking it up, because they know that they'll do better at the polls when they're handing out more free money to people, which will ultimately just fuel more inflation. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Here's Chrystia Freeland talking about the housing crisis and what their goal is. Listen to this one and then listen to the uproarious laughter that follows this portion of her budgetary announcement today.
Together, we are putting into action a plan to build nearly 4 million homes by 2031 and to unlock the door to the middle class for more young Canadians.
Good luck. They're not on track for that, not anywhere near that. And because their policies are so focused on capital gains, for one thing, especially as it relates to real estate and rental income, and rental properties, I should say, that will act as a deterrent to investment in rental properties. That means you're going to get less private investment, which would stimulate more housing starts, more construction, and reduce the supply-demand ratio so that, you see, if people think that they can make money by renting out homes, they will invest in homes. They will even, and because there's more investment going in, because they're buying homes to rent out, you're actually stimulating the construction of more rental properties, increasing the supply of housing. And that investment is coming from the private side. It's not tax dollars. It's not government spending money to build houses. It's private people, individuals, sometimes even just middle-class people who invest in another home that they're going to rent out. It's a rental property. They become a landlord, essentially. By doing that, you've created more capacity for housing without spending a dime of government money. It could be you. You could work enough years to come up with a down payment to get a second mortgage on a second property and purchase the property, or even have one built so you can rent it out. Make money back on that over time. The rent, of course, pays for the second mortgage, and then you profit from that through a capital gain over many, many years, say the life of a mortgage, 20 or 30 years even. But you've created a place for someone to live in that amount of time. And over that amount of time, as they rent there, those people would have the opportunity to live and build a life and maybe get out of that rental because they have an affordable place to live, because there's been private investment in there. No, they want to tax the gains that a private investor makes in rental property at a higher rate, starting at $250,000, which, when you think about the price, the cost of a home today isn't really that much money, relatively speaking. So 20 or 30 years from now, or 10 years from now, whenever they sell that property, that capital gain, however much money they make on that capital, they would be taxed at a higher rate than what they're being taxed at now. That will be a disincentive again to anyone who would invest in rental property. So you're going to take more private money out of the market, and then you were even more reliant now on government spending to build houses. And what kind of houses do you get from the government? You get geared to income, low rent, rent-controlled stuff, housing projects. That's what you get from the government. And that's not the Canadian/American dream. That is government ghettos, basically, is what they're telling you they're going to give you here. That's my assessment. That's what I've seen all through history. In my lifetime, that's what these government programs aimed at housing ultimately give us. In Canada, it hasn't been as bad as in many places in the United States, I would say, when it comes to these kinds of housing projects, because they do integrate them into other communities. But in some cases, that actually results in lower property values overall in a neighborhood. It's not that bad. It's not a bad overall plan, because what they've done is they take those government housing projects and they put them right into the suburbs, and they mix the low geared to income housing, and they sort of camouflage it so it sort of looks like everything else in the neighborhood, and they put those things right into neighborhoods and integrate them in with where some people are paying and buying their homes, and the other ones are geared to income, where people are paying, less in rent, but maybe don't own it, and they're generally like townhomes and things like that look like other stuff, but it's all government housing. So it's not as bad because you get a mix, socioeconomic mix in those neighborhoods. It masks some of the social problems, diminishes some of them as well, because you get integration between the different socioeconomic classes, if you will. But it also lowers sometimes property values because you do get more socioeconomic problems. It's a complicated thing. I'm not entirely explaining it with the giving it the justice that it needs here tonight, but it's because we're dealing with this budget. And that's the broader issue here, right? It's about an approach to the economy, and we're getting more of the same really here with this government. Instead of prudent fiscal policy, we're just getting more spending. They have a problem with inflation, so what do? They give us policies that will really only give us more inflation. And then who do they blame it on? They blame it on the big corporations, the big companies, or investors, or even middle-class people who want to invest in rental properties or other kinds of investments. A capital gain can also be money that you make on the stock market. You invest your capital, your money, in other capital, which is stocks, mutual funds, and then you make a capital gain on that over time. You gain on your capital, you gain capital, and then they're going to tax you on that. So it's more of a deterrent again to investing. When you get into that situation, man, it fuels inflation too, because people just can't get rid of their money fast enough. Like, what do you do with your money? What do you invest in? You don't hold on to it. You put it into other things, wherever you think you can protect your money the best. And these inflationary issues, well, if you're a socialist, you're not going to blame it on money printing. You're not going to blame it on government. The problem's created by government, and you can look at any economic textbook worth its salt. And it's just, this is economics 101. You print money, you give free money away, you fuel inflation. That's the way it works. More of something makes it worth less. You print more money, the money that's out there becomes worth less. Supply and demand. Monetary policy works exactly like any other good out there. I mean, good like a product, anything. This pen. If you make 17 billion pens, they're not worth very much. If you only had one pen with which to write things down, this pen would be extremely valuable. The only writing instrument in existence. It's a very scarce commodity. You increase the money supply, it's worth less. That's what they're doing. They're going to print more money. They're going to give away more free money. And now we've been seeing that, especially during the pandemic, where they gave away oodles of money to companies in particular. I mean, they sit there and blame the big corporations for being greedy. Who got rich during the pandemic? The big companies got rich. Why? Because the Trudeau Liberals and the NDP, run by Jagmeet Singh, who were propping up the Liberals, what did they do? They adopted these policies where mom and pop shops got shut down, big corporate entities and big box stores, they all got to stay open, and they got big government grants, and then they sit there and complain about Loblaws, grocery store chain, and what have they done in recent years? Oh, they gave them how many millions of dollars for refrigeration units? in their supermarkets. Government money, our money. They gave it to the big corporations. Then they turn around, people like Jagmeet Singh of the NDP, Trudeau's puppet master, really. And who does he blame? He blames the big corporations. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's like it's a secret deal like that they have with these big companies. It's like, we're going to give you all this money in the back door through these government programs. We're gonna help you out. We're gonna feed you billions of dollars over here, and then over here at budget time, we're gonna criticize you, and we're gonna say you're not paying your fair share in taxes. So we'll tax you a little bit more over here, but give you a whole lot more over there. And people will cheer when we say we're gonna tax you. And then over here, we just won't talk about that too much. The media might make a little bit of hay with that, but we'll just poo-poo that and just kind of shove it off to the side, not talk about it too much. But over here, Jagmeet Singh, today, he blames big corporate greed for all of the economic problems we've been seeing. And it's Jagmeet Singh who is the tail wagging the dog here, folks. Make no mistake about that in Canada. This is the guy who has pushed Canada so far left, it's coming all the way back around and wrapping itself back up into right-wing politics and economic policies. Some would say economic fascism. Here we go with Jagmeet Singh. In his response to the federal budget, you listen to him. He's going to say corporate greed. Listen. Here it comes.
There are some things in this budget that we fought for, that we spent time hearing from Canadians, and we forced this government to deliver. Those include protections for renters. Renters live in constant fear that they're going to get rent evicted or kicked out of their homes because large corporate landlords want to buy those buildings and then evict them. We forced this government to put in place a renters protection fund, something that we've been calling for over a year. And that's going to help people stay in their homes and keep some of those affordable units affordable.
Yeah, but it's not housing ownership.
Some relief for parents.
You'll own nothing.
So the kids, when they go to school, can get a nutritious meal with a national school food program. That's going to get
because parents can't afford to buy food,
plate, save them
so
money.
The government will save you.
We also force this government to move forward on covering free birth control, free diabetes medication, and devices.
Because people can't afford it because your economic policies suck.
We force this government
to bring
down the cost for Canadians.
It's just true.
That's some relief in a time when Canadians are really feeling squeezed. We force this government to deliver that. Let's be absolutely clear. This would have never happened but for the fact you Democrats forced the Liberals to give this relief to Canadians, to give a bit of a break.
Give it away. Control you.
Though. We're concerned about the fact that the Liberals ignored the opportunity to take on corporate greed. We know the major driver that is driving up the cost of living is corporate greed. When it comes to buying groceries.
It's got nothing to do with government policy. It's not the government.
And you're paying some of the highest cell phone and internet fees in the world. That's corporate greed, driving up the cost of your cell phone and internet fees. When you look at trying to find a home,
it is, but it's government.
Keep on driving up the cost of housing, and corporate landlords are scooping up all the available housing. That is corporate greed. That's making it harder for people to find a home. That is a major problem and makes life unaffordable. The Liberals failed to use the opportunity they had to take on corporate greed. Let's also be clear about the Conservatives. The Conservatives want to take this all away from you. They want to take away childcare. They've been open about that. Pierre Poilievre wants to take away childcare. He wants to take away dental care from seniors.
No, he'll give you credit so you can go buy it wherever you want to buy it.
He wants to take that away from seniors.
Instead of having the government force you to go to a government-run indoctrination center for your kids.
And he wants to cut further. He wants to cut healthcare. He wants to cut pensions. He wants to cut EI. He's going to make things even worse for Canadians. But there are some concerns we have in this budget as well. I want to lay out some of those concerns we have. We're concerned about the disability benefit that we fought for being only $200 a month. That is far too little to meet the needs of people living with disabilities. We're concerned that this government has not laid out the plan to address the gap in infrastructure and housing funding for Indigenous communities. That's a serious concern. We're concerned about the loss of 5,000 public sector employees. Serious concern as well. So we've got some
way too many government employees, as far as I'm concerned. It's government bloat.
And we're going to continue to use
bunch
our power
of overpaid bureaucrats.
To fight for Canadians to make Ottawa work for you, to give you some relief. I'll do that again in French, then I look forward to your questions.
We'll skip the French because I know our audience is English. Let's go back here. And
Average rent in major cities in our country.
rent.
Apartment
They're focused on rent.
$1,000
People want to own homes and build equity so you have a retirement.
and still have money
It
left
like
over to pay the
houses
and be able to
are a retirement fund for a lot of
very
people.
serious concern that people
You don't
have
get that if you rent.
just 10, 20
You build
years
no
ago,
equity in renting.
Further, 40 years ago,
Your money
people
goes
could
right
afford to buy
down
a
the
home
drain.
on their salary, on working one job. And now people working very good jobs, multiple jobs, are saying there's no way for us to even afford rent.
After 8 years of far left socialist
Specifically
economic
because
policies.
The Liberals failed to address the major reason why things are so expensive. That's corporate greed. They did not take the opportunity to take on corporate greed with the wealth tax on the excess
Corporate greed,
profits
corporate greed,
of the
corporate
gas
greed.
companies.
Just keep repeating corporate greed. It's easy to sell that to people, but it's not really true because you're just going to shovel money back to the corporations through the back door. Look how much they've given to the auto companies.
Committed to taking on the real cause that is driving up the cost of living.
Yeah, it's called money printing.
So that's not a decision that we are making right now, and the reason for that is the following: while we fought for certain things in the budget that are very important, that are going to give relief to people, we have some serious concerns, and I want to hear from the Prime Minister what his plan is to address those concerns. What is his plan to address the fact that we're losing? Well, his budget's going to cut 5,000 public sector employees. How does he ensure that we're still going to get good service for Canadians? What is the plan to ensure that Indigenous communities that for so long have not received adequate funding for infrastructure and housing, what's the plan to close that gap? What's the plan to address the fact that $500 or $200 a month for people living with disabilities is insufficient? What is the plan to address those concerns? So I want to hear that from the Prime Minister before we make a decision.
Any concern on the debt charges, sir? I mean, we're seeing taxpayers are going to be paying a lot more to service debt, and that's going to raise some questions about what they're getting serviced. Is that a concern for you as you call for more spending?
So we've long raised the concerns that this Liberal government should be cutting spending when it comes to billions of dollars in subsidies to oil and gas companies. We can't afford that. They should be cutting
Because they hate oil,
billions of
they
dollars
hate gas.
on private consultants. We've said that they should have cut the Conservative corporate handout, which to date has resulted in $60 billion of money in their pockets, money taken out of Canadians' pockets. So there are significant things that we would do differently to ensure that we are actually being very responsible.
Yeah, he'd take it even further to the left and wrap it around into the right.
Ensure that
The
the super rich pay their fair share.
radical
that
right.
We are not wasting money on subsidies to profitable oil and gas companies, and that's billions of dollars.
Yeah, we hate oil.
wasted in that way.
Can't have energy.
These things that the Liberals-
Let's tax the crap out of it.
Est-ce que vous allez appuyer le budget comme vous l'expliquez en anglais?
Ce n'est pas une décision qu'on va prendre aujourd'hui. J'ai dit que
Hang on. We'll get back to English here. I'm going to let him keep talking.
pour des libéraux et ils doivent et le Prime Ministre.
So I don't know if this budget will pass. I think it probably will, but
You listed a couple concerns you have with the budget as it exists. What kind of changes must you see in there to get support from the NDP on this one?
Well, there's one contrast that's very clear. While I've identified it again and again, the reason why your groceries are high, the reason why your cell phone bills are high, the reason why you can't afford housing is corporate greed. And the Liberals are failing to address that, and the Conservatives won't do that either. The Conservatives and the Liberals are far too close to wealthy
Nope.
CEOs and big corporations to take on the real reason why
Well,
their
yes
cost of
and
living is
no.
so high. That's a contrast. It's clear to me that the Liberals and nor the Conservatives are ever going to address that. They'll need New Democrats to address that problem. But in terms of the specific question, I need to hear a plan from the Prime Minister. What is his plan to respond to the concerns that I have before we make a decision?
But you listed a bunch of concerns there. Do you need all of those concerns filled? Like, what is the must-have of those concerns in order to secure your support?
Well, each and every one of those are very important concerns. So I want to hear what the plan is. Like, how is the Prime Minister going to guarantee that there's not massive cuts to services for Canadians with the cutting of 5,000 employees? How is he going to justify to people living with disabilities that $200 a month is enough to meet their needs? I need to hear a plan on that before we make a decision.
So is the supply agreement blown up now, sir, with we're not sure you're going to support the budget, you're ready to go in an election? Is this where we're at?
Where we're at right now is there's things in the budget that we fought for that are there. There's problems that we have. I want to hear what the plan is from the Prime Minister to address my concerns. Thank you so much, Misty. Missy.
So that's non-committal either way. I'll tell you this, the reason I stayed on him so long is because he holds the key to power. He's the kingmaker, or the king dethroner. He really is. If the NDP votes against this budget, the Conservatives likely will. If the NDP votes against it, the government would be forced to call an election, because this is a key piece. It's a key vote. If a budget fails, if it's not approved in the House, it becomes a vote of confidence. It becomes a vote of non-confidence, at which point Trudeau would lose the confidence of the House, because the government doesn't even have enough confidence, doesn't have the confidence of all the members of Parliament, or enough members of Parliament to pass a budget, which means that the government is then viewed as being somewhat dysfunctional or unable to function properly because they can't get a budget passed, in which case it could trigger an election. So here we go again with the whole vote of non-confidence, or a confidence vote in the House. Could happen. Jagmeet not really being too firm on that one way or the other there, but I know that's what a lot of people want to see. I keep on telling you, an election is probably not that far away. Just hold on, it's a-coming. Justin Trudeau's days are numbered. But see, Jagmeet is the kingmaker or the king dethroner. If he doesn't get what he wants, at least to a larger degree, Trudeau is in trouble. He's the tail wagging the dog. That's why all of our policies have pushed so far to the left, because of the NDP. And I would say that the NDP, as it sits today, is no longer the party of the working class and the middle class. Indeed, what it is it's the party of unions, collectivism, and collective corporatism, supporting corporatocracy. He's kind of being disingenuous in the way that he's portraying the corporate greed. Case in point, you want to talk about cell phone prices? Do you know why cell phone prices are so high in this country? Previous conservative government wanted to allow U.S. company, I believe it was AT&T, to come into, or no, it was Verizon. They wanted Verizon to have their application to set up service in Canada approved. The Liberals, the NDP, and the unions colluded with the big cell phone companies here in Canada to create a whole campaign designed to keep Verizon out of the market. They worked together. The big corporate, government-protected corporations, the cell phone companies like TELUS, Bell, Rogers, they all work together with the unions and the support of the NDP and the Liberals. They all work together. Government, unions, big corporations, all together to make sure that they didn't allow any additional competition to come in from the U.S. side. Had Verizon come into this marketplace, they would have set up additional cell phone towers. You'd have more cell phone coverage, more internet coverage across the country from an American company investing in infrastructure. You would have had more choice from more brands of cell phone services. You would have more retail locations in malls. You'd have more choice online for cell phone service across the country. You would have more competition. As a result, it would have reduced cell phone rates. The big corporations, the big cell phone companies didn't want that. The existing Canadian, although they do have, some outside foreign investment here, they didn't want it because they want to keep the prices as high as possible. We do pay among the highest cell phone rates in the world in Canada because we have very limited competition. We have what is referred to as an oligopoly. That's the truth. You think that you have a choice between Virgin and Bell? Same company. You think you have a choice between Rogers and Fido? It's the same company. They just put different brands on these things, create different packages, and you actually are buying it from the same company. It's just a different brand. They set up different stores, different brands. You go to the Fido store in the mall, and on the other side is the Rogers store. It's the same company. Most people don't realize that. So they create this illusion of competition. It increases cell phone data prices. We pay crazy prices in this country for cell phone services. That's why when I went away to Costa Rica, I didn't use my phone. Because if I had purchased the package, or if I've been paying the daily rates for cell phone service and data down in Costa Rica, back to the Canadian company that I have my cell phone service with, I probably would have had to take out a second mortgage on the house I own, my primary residence, to pay for the darn package. So I had, other ways of communicating with people while I was away, but that's because of the lack of competition. Had they let Verizon into the marketplace here, you would have created more jobs for people. You would have had more retail jobs, more construction jobs, more jobs for engineers and people on the technical side, more call center jobs, more jobs all the way down the line. In addition to that, you would have had more choice, more brands, more services enter the marketplace, and you would have had lower cell phone rates. But because corporations that exist in Canada colluded with the unions, who also want to keep the rates high because they then get higher wages, they can demand higher wages for their membership, for their employees, because the cell phone companies have higher prices. We all end up paying to support the higher wages and the higher union dues that the unions collect. And then the government, or the Liberals and the NDP, supported that campaign in collusion with them. So you get this arm of government supporting all of that, colluding with it, because then they feed money back into the political campaigns of the politicians who support them and get these protectionist policies in place. In this case, it was a total block. No, Verizon not allowed to come in, would not approve them coming in to set up additional services for people. So we get less service, pay higher prices, and then Jagmeet Singh stands up there during this budget and says it's corporate greed. No, it's government, union, and government, so left-wing government, political party greed. That's what it is. The Conservatives wanted more competition at the time. That goes back a number of years. That's not directly in this budget, but we're still feeling the effects of that today, and we still don't have any of that outside competition. Very limited, small levels of competition from outside investors from other countries in that regard. And that's the truth of the matter. And people don't understand it. They don't see it. They're not even aware, in most cases, that whole saga unfolded. And that's just one industry in this country that is all skewed, distorted, price distortions. That's just one. You want to talk about milk? You want to talk about the price of corn? You want to talk about the price of all kinds of commodities that we pay higher prices for above market rate at the grocery stores? That's because of government policies, not because of corporate greed. Corporations, you know what a corporation is? A corporation is just a collection of people, investors. It's you, it's me, it's where people put money because you have rising inflation. So rather than put it in a bank account where the value just goes down, people invest in the stock market because they're hoping to make a higher rate of return. You then become a part owner of that company. It's a corporation. A corp is a body made up of many people. It's us. It's people. Now, yes, there are, these big, no soul corporate entities that exist, of course, made up of shareholders. And some of these big, faceless, nameless, non-human entities do exist as big companies, and then they invest as well in the stock market and fuel more and more growth. But the bottom line is, it's about shareholders. And it's easy to demonize these big companies. And the big CEOs, they get paid too much in many cases, no question about that. But again, that's all because these big corporations, while the government may demonize them, Jagmeet Singh may sit there and say it's big corporate greed, it's just a dirty deal that's being made. He gets to criticize them because he's paying them off over there. And then it comes back full circle, and then they get paid off with government grants and other kinds of subsidies so they can build an expansion onto a factory so that they can create more jobs that we pay for. And then the deficits go up, and then we get record levels of debt. That's what goes on the left side. It's all smoke and mirrors. They sit there and tell you that they're propping things up and they're helping the little guy while they're handing oodles of cash to the big corporations. And why would they do that? Because it's the executives and the CEOs. Ultimately, they get the big paycheck at the end of the day. And why do they get the big paycheck? Because they get paid because it's not just about running a company efficiently. It's about schmoozing with the right politicians and bureaucrats to make sure you get the subsidies and the tax grants on the other side. If you're running a big auto company, the only way you can survive today is to make sure that you get your handout from the government too. They're all feeding at the public trough. They've put them all on corporate welfare so they can control the big corporations the same way they want to control you and me and all of us with free health care, free dental. Oh, your kids can't afford to eat? Don't worry about it. We'll just feed them before they go to class at the public indoctrination center that they call daycare or public education. And then people turn around and they complain because their kids are being subjected to all kinds of social engineering. They're not being raised the way that the parents want them raised. They're being raised the way the government wants them raised. And why is that? Because the parents can't afford to keep them, can't afford to take care of them, can't even feed them breakfast. So off they go to the public indoctrination center. And then parents wake up when their kids turn 18, 19, they come home from college, if they even get that far, if they can even afford it, even with the government subsidies for tuitions. They turn around and the kids come home from school one day and they're like, "Are you even my kid? With your purple, green, orange, spiky hair and the tattoo of the snake on your face and 17 pronouns and who knows what else is going on." And nothing against whatever people want to do, but if you are afraid of your kid coming home so you don't even recognize them or that they don't reflect your values, and maybe those are your values, you should, I guess, have the right to try to raise your kid any way you want. But if you don't have the means to take care of your family, then you lose control of your family. You lose control of your destiny and your legacy. It's an existential threat to you as a person. That's what these economic policies do to people. Not to say that people shouldn't have a helping hand up, but my goodness, have we not seen the effects of this? And yet I still hear people, in the face of this economic crisis we're in, unprecedented levels of inflation and taxation, and they think that a lot of people think that the solution is more government. Jagmeet Singh is trying to sell you exactly that, and so is Trudeau. He has to because Jagmeet Singh is forcing him to. I'll tell you this, we probably would have been better off with a majority liberal government rather than this minority coalition government marrying the NDP with the Liberals, because the NDP is the architect of a lot of these policies. And when Trudeau doesn't go far enough, Jagmeet Singh forces his hand just to retain power. That's why you're getting all these ramped up social programs and this, I'm going to call it what it is, misinformation on economics. I'm going to call it miseconomics, diseconomics. It's actually a lie, is ultimately what it comes down to. It's a lie. Just like, you think about it. They promised everybody a higher minimum wage, didn't they? $15 an hour, blah, 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 where depending on what province you're in. And they jack up the minimum wage, but what happens? They give you the higher minimum wage, but then you got so much inflation that it just ate up all the gains that people made. It didn't make a difference because they didn't get corresponding economic growth. All they did was force the employers to pay more out, but there's no corresponding growth because the economic policies stifle growth. The only way you're ever going to get truly higher wages and build more wealth for people is through economic growth. Economic growth. More abundance of things. Even if prices come down, the standard of living goes up because affluence is about standard of living, not just about a number. You can make people think that they're richer by inflating the economy. The price of a house has more than doubled under Justin Trudeau's watch. But people are actually further behind, even though the houses are worth more. Because even if you sell your house, you have to go buy and get some other place to live, but it costs so much to live that you're no further ahead. And the people who don't have a house can't even afford to get into one anymore. And so overall, it's very unfair. It's creating massive economic disparity between the have-nots and the have-yachts, as Pierre Poilievre would say. And it's very, very true. I mean, you're very fortunate, I guess, if you already owned property and maybe a rental property, and then along comes this socialistic economic policy and this massive money printing and inflation. And so I guess maybe if your property relative to the cost of other goods and services inflated, and I think real estate sort of did in that sector, you could make a little bit more and then sell that off and then get your investment back and you'd have a capital gain so that you would actually end up, maybe pretty substantially further ahead, but you already had to be in that position. If you're trying to get into it now, the market's prohibitive for you. Costs way too high. This is a devastating economy, and this budget really hasn't done anything, in my estimation, to address the issue of home ownership, which is really at the core of a lot of the problems that we're facing here. This is a housing crisis that we are in, an economic crisis that is predicated on monetary policy that has resulted in massive inflation, and a housing crisis as a result of massive inflation, increasing demand for housing, while economic policies are stifling construction. I could go on and on and on. I don't need to. All you need to do is just wait and see. I'm going to come back and tell you I told you so. Unfortunately, a year from now, when they get to the next budget, and I'm going to say, see, I told you. And in fact, I can point back and say, see, I told you we were going to get massive inflation because I called it a long time ago. As soon as they started to ramp up that money printing machine, called it all the way down the line. Not just me, a lot of other economists that I've paid attention to. It's just, you want to talk about natural law, that's what natural law is. The law of supply and demand. You can't escape it, no matter how much the government tries to pretend they can. It's just not true. We'll come back. We'll get into other news on the other side.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Just looking in the chat here, and Raging Against the Machine says, what if we joined Russia, LOL? You know what, man? I think that we're probably closer to that than a lot of people think. Yeah, I think that it seems like everybody wants to invade us these days. We've heard Tucker Carlson talk about invading Canada. We've heard Jackson Hinkle talk about invading Canada. Hands off my country, Jackson, okay? And now I'm hearing Tim Pool has even said it. Do you think that's all an accident? No, I don't think so. I think they're teeing us up. It's like foreshadowing. So I think we're closer to that than people probably realize. Now, I know that they're talking about the United States doing that, but I think that's because other countries have designs on taking us over as well. I think that's kind of the truth of the matter, because we have a lot of resources that people want. And I just too much talk about it for it to be random or a joke anymore. I think that we're actually in play, because we are in a third world war, and I think that you have countries like China also trying to exert massive influence here, and taking over the country does not necessarily mean in 2024 bringing the military here in order to take over the country. You don't do it that way in 2024, and certainly not a country like Canada. And you wouldn't do it that way in the United States either. You know how you do it? Information warfare, propaganda, influence over institutions like educational institutions, government bureaucracies. It's agency capture, where you basically infiltrate and take over time. Undermine confidence in the government. You employ the techniques of intelligence services like the old KGB, now the FSB, as we've been, I'm sure most of you have seen that Yuri Bezmenov video explaining how it's all done over time, and the techniques today are much more sophisticated than that, and it's hard to tell exactly who it is who's playing in the background, but I can tell you this: China's a big player, Russia's a big player, the United States is even a big player, and I think they all have their sights set on Canada. And I don't think that all these people saying, I think we should just take over Canada, I don't think it's so much of a joke. I think people really do want to take over Canada, or at the very least have massive influence here, so that they can profit from our resources, our water, our oil, our lumber, our minerals. And you're seeing that in the foreign interference inquiry was taking place, that's now wrapped up. I mean, all the information is right there. And I've been reading intelligence briefings also explaining how foreign governments are directly involved in a lot of these affairs. And probably even, I don't think our sitting government, even the Trudeau Liberals, maybe they are. Maybe they're just turning a blind eye to some of this, if you know what I mean. I don't think they're taking it nearly seriously enough. So I see these comments in here, and it sounds like a joke, but it ain't a joke. In fact, somebody sent me, and I won't even tell you who, sent me a link to a video about Hollywood and the Jews and, the Jewish influence over Hollywood, it's all true. A lot of Jewish producers and directors and so on, and the way they established Hollywood, not exclusively Jewish, but certainly a big influence there. But, a lot of that today is a bit of a cliche that isn't true, or not even a bit, it's a big cliche that isn't really true. And case in point, China has a massive ownership stake in Hollywood today, in the big movie studios, in media. In fact, I can show you. I'll just bring it up. I didn't mean to talk about this tonight. You can Google this stuff. How much Hollywood studios does China own? I mean, they own a majority stake in Disney. I know that. Today, they've been investing, especially since they're, being included since about 2001 into the, the Western economic system, and they've grown and grown and grown, and they've been very good at it. I mean, here, just take a look. 12 Chinese-owned media companies, AMC Theaters, Legendary Entertainment, Dick Clark Productions. See if we can get a little... Here's one right here. Here's an article. You can find all this information. It's not hard. And it's true, just a lot of people choose to ignore it. They'd rather focus on the cliche, the trope, saying, oh, the Jews control everything. No. A lot of foreign influence. Sony Corporation owns big stakes in studios. And there are big reasons for that. A fire hose of Chinese investment has been flowing into Hollywood for the last few years as Middle Kingdom firms have scooped up production companies and theater chains by the billion. And while D.C. has finally taken notice and is asking the government to take a closer look at foreign ownership of American content companies, Chinese firms have already accumulated a substantial portfolio of media and entertainment-related companies, often at healthy premiums. And Hollywood isn't ready to look that gift horse in the mouth. Wanda, a real estate and entertainment conglomerate owned by China's richest man, Wang Jianlin, made its first Hollywood splash in 2012 when the company paid $2.6 billion for AMC Entertainment, the parent of AMC Theaters, the second largest theater chain in the U.S. Wanda-owned AMC paid $1.2 billion to acquire Carmike Cinemas, in a deal that just closed in November. It goes on. Wanda paid $3.5 billion for the Jurassic World production company in January, even though Legendary lost $500 million last year, according to a Chinese regulatory filing. However, plenty of Legendary's high-octane action and fantasy flicks have been bigger hits in China than the U.S., such as Warcraft. Wanda spent $1 billion to acquire the producer of the Golden Globes, American Music Awards, and New Year's Rockin' Eve. The deal marks Wanda's first foray into television after spending billions on the big screen, and that's Dick Clark Productions. Who would have thought Dick Clark Productions ended up being owned by or controlled by Chinese investors? Honey Capital, I Am Global, Studio 8, Dichotomy, Disney, Cirque du Soleil, Riot Games, goes on and on and on. Why do they do that? I bring that up because, you see, you control media. You can control, really, the culture of a country. You control the culture. You control the country. You control the messaging. You control everything, man. You control the way people think, attitudes, social engineering. Tell me about it. Tell me about it, man. They're doing all that through Hollywood, through television, through the internet. And they're doing it in all kinds of industries. Academia, agency capture, corporate capture. This is how you take over a country, right? You think you think other countries are going to show up here with tanks on the border and armed soldiers? No, they do it in soft ways, through influence. They do it through culture. That's why it's so important for any political movement to actually have culture. Music, theater, Shenyun. We had, an interview the other day with a representative from Shenyun, right? Talking about culture before the Chinese Communist Party. Speaking about that here on the program, they're using theater to promote a message of culture, but it's also very political. That's why, maybe you agree with this group, maybe you agree with that group, maybe you like communism, maybe you like something else. But whatever it is that's out there, whatever people are trying to promote, it's always done through culture. And you control that. You control Hollywood, man. You control everything. Because even during World War II, the Hollywood machine went into overdrive and they started producing all these very patriotic movies to push the war effort, right? Same thing goes on today. It's just being done in, I'd say, even more sophisticated ways through the internet, through pundits, influencers, people who, if you don't think that some of these guys, not all of them, but a lot of them, if they're on this side of an issue or that side of an issue, why? Why are they choosing this team and that team? It's because they're on that team. It's the way it works today. Are you getting it? That's why you should take it all with a grain of salt. Especially if you see somebody taking an extreme position on something, on any particular social, political issue, even the wars. Might be wise to say, is that person really unbiased, or are they trying to sell me something? Is this movie, this Top Gun movie, is that really unbiased? Like, they're trying to sell me. It's propaganda, is what it is. And you'll notice, actually, that Chinese villains have largely been removed from Hollywood flicks. And that's because of all the Chinese money that's flowing through Hollywood. Is it wrong? It's just the reality, man. We need to be aware of these things, though, to be intelligent and responsible consumers of media. Unfortunately, most people just swallow the stuff up with their eyes and their ears and their emotions blindly. And they get sucked right down into it. And it comes in all different forms these days, doesn't it? Speaking of propaganda, we're seeing lots of that on both sides of this issue over in Gaza, Israel, Iran. The other night we had Kevin Michelizzi on, right? Providing some pretty good analysis, I think, of what happened with those drone and missile strikes against Israel from Iran in response to their allegation that Israel took out the embassy in Syria, the Iranian embassy, the building there, killing some top Iranian military officials, including a couple of generals. Israel responded saying, we don't comment on foreign media reports in situations like this, so they wouldn't really comment on it. The New York Times reporting that they have sources that have informed them that indeed it was Israel that launched this attack against the embassy. Iran finally responding, sort of knowing or even telegraphing that they were going to do this, I would say, to the West and certainly to Israel. And then in the analysis from Kevin, it was like, his premise was that, or theory, backed up by evidence, is that Iran could have done a lot more damage than they did if they had launched multiple waves of drones and missiles instead of stopping when they did. On the Israeli side and the West side, where you see the United States and the UK assisting, and possibly even Jordan, maybe some other countries as well, in defending Israel, they're saying that their defense forces prove that they have superior technology, that they're able to stop these things. But the hypersonic missiles, Kevin said he didn't think that they used them. Wasn't sure, didn't think that they used them. He said, show me the proof. Because there was reported only minimal damage, and we hadn't seen any actual video of the impacts at that point. And I said immediately, even the night of the attacks, as there was video flowing out there, all kinds of video and information online, I said, take this all with a dose of skepticism, because a lot of this is propaganda. And I saw influencers out there taking extreme positions on this, saying that the Israeli Iron Dome is being overwhelmed with this attack from Iran. Indeed, that was not the case. In fact, the vast majority of the drones and the missiles were shot down. But there is now evidence and an admission even from the IDF on the Israeli side that some hypersonic missiles did get through, which is a big concern. But Kevin didn't say. I have to back him up on this because, well, he said he didn't see evidence yet of hypersonic missiles having been used. He said, "Show me the proof." Now we have the proof. So I think his assessment's still probably pretty darn spot on. And I think, yeah, Iran probably could have done more damage if they had launched multiple waves. But, these hypersonic missiles, very destabilizing in the overall scheme of geopolitics, creating a lot of instability because, it's very difficult for the West to defend against these things if they're able to at all, because they are so fast. They travel at Mach 5 or faster using new technology, new materials that at that speed conventional materials would just melt because of the friction. But they've got this figured out, and it is a real thing, and they demonstrated this. They have used them in the conflict in Ukraine, but this against Israel further illustrated the capabilities of these weapons. And we did see the damage. Israel saying that the damage is really minimal, and it was inflicted on an airport primarily. I have actually a graphic here to show you if it was loaded up. I believe it was. Yes, here it is. This is what was used. These are drones. These are the weapons that were used to attack Israel Shahed drones, the IMAD, and the Pave cruise missile. And hypersonic missiles. These hypersonic missiles, they're not only fast, so fast that they're difficult to detect until just the last moment, they're also maneuverable, which makes it very difficult to track and determine exactly where they are going. And in that regard, they are very destabilizing. Strategically, it creates more problems in the field. It is a big concern because these missiles, just the kinetic energy from them alone, even without a warhead, massive explosions as a result because they come in at such velocity. Now you couple that with explosives and the damage can be devastating. And because it sort of compresses the amount of response time that is available to someone trying to defend from these weapons, you have really only minutes to first identify these targets, determine where they're coming from, determine whether you should shoot it down or not, how you're going to shoot it down, where is it going. And normally with like a ballistic missile, you would have lots of time because it travels over a big arc, over a long, and it's detected fairly easily. And because these are such new weapons, it isn't exactly clear how well countries will be able to defend against them. And we've just seen that they got through the Iron Dome. We've seen claims from the U.S.-Ukrainian side that these hypersonic missiles have been shot down in Ukraine. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. Using Patriot missile systems, I suppose it's possible because they may come in the final leg at sub-hypersonic speeds. I don't know. I can't determine how truthful those statements about the Patriot missile system shooting down a hypersonic missile from Russia how accurate that really was, or how truthful. But it is destabilizing because it's now technology that Russia has provided to Iran. And while we had sort of mutually assured destruction with nuclear weapons, this further destabilizes things now because it creates a whole new dynamic where some of these missiles could even be equipped with nuclear warheads potentially. So it's hard for even the risk to be assessed at this point. What are these missiles equipped with as they're coming straight at you, and you only have minutes, like maybe 5 or 6 minutes tops, or maybe less, maybe even seconds, to determine whether you shoot it down or launch your nukes or launch other counter weapons over there to make these strategic decisions. I've been doing some research into it, and consulting firms that can provide information to intelligence services and government and defense agencies are very concerned about this. You go back even like 5-6 years ago, they were focused on these things. Basically, 3 countries have had the technology: Russia, China, and the United States, a distant third. They have the technology, but they don't have the weapons. Technology to a limited degree, but Russia and China have missiles that they're deploying now. This is something that puts ships at risk, may not be able to defend against missile attacks. What kind of weapons would you use to shoot down hypersonic missiles? Maybe lasers. You got to be fast. Here's an intelligence briefing video discussing the new realities of the geopolitical situation. This, I don't know what you call this. Is this like a new Cold War? I'd say it's a new warm war of some kind, a new kind of arms race that we are now involved in real time, and it's happening while we are actually at war. Check this out.
Most countries use some form of what we call an OODA loop when they're making decisions about whether to respond to a threat or not. You observe a threat, you figure out where it's coming from, then decide whether you need to respond, and then act on that decision.
How are you going to shoehorn all those steps into 6 minutes?
There are 2 implications here. The first is that people will become more trigger happy. The compressed time frame to make a decision makes people much more likely to want to be the first strike as opposed to the second strike, because you can't preserve your second strike capabilities. The second implication is that if you can't defend against a decapitation attack, then you have to devolve command and control of your weapons into the field.
To the military rather than to the national leaders. That runs the risk of an accidental strategic war. Another possibility is to disperse your strategic weapons. That runs the risk of the weapons being seized by terrorists. Another possibility is to go to a strategic doctrine called launch on warning. And finally, you can just decide in a crisis that there is going to be a full-scale strategic conflict, and you strike first. None of these options is very good.
I think the world will be a more dangerous place unless we have some sort of an agreement with each other to not share those technologies.
The end state that we're trying to avoid is the proliferation of hypersonic technology, not just to rogue nations, but also to nations with regional rivalries that could prove to be very destabilizing. What we're recommending is a kind of addendum or amendments to the missile technology control regime.
This regime could be supplemented with some controls on hypersonic components. It would be a waste of time to do this if the US or Russia or China plan to export complete missiles.
If you can just start with a trilateral agreement between these 3 major nations, that would be taking a really effective step in terms of controlling the proliferation of these weapons.
I am optimistic about the US, Russia, and China. It's in their interest to do this. And there's time to do it. Not a lot of time, but a few years.
That was 6 years ago. And that is from the Rand Corporation. 6 years ago. Iran has the technology now. They have the missiles. They have the weapons. Some might say it provides a new balance in the Middle East. Others will argue that it's destabilizing. I think maybe both. Israel, surrounded by adversaries for a long time, provided with nuclear technology from the United States. A lot of power there, a lot of muscle, a lot of resentment, a lot of violence. And now, this. So now, Iran, Russia, they have a strategic, a military, a technological advantage, and they're using it to exert some pressure in order to get what they want politically, and using it to respond to this attack on their embassy. And the United States telling Israel now, do not, if you attack, if you proceed with an offensive against Iran, you'll basically go it alone. The United States, Biden administration saying they won't participate in offensive action against Iran. And yet the Israeli officials still tonight vowing that there will be some sort of response at some point in the not very distant future against Iran as a result of the attack involving missiles and drones. And Israel not accepting responsibility, not saying that, not admitting that they were responsible for that strike on the embassy in Syria. It's all politics. It's a game. And it's a very dangerous game at this point, because even though Iran doesn't have or isn't talking about nuclear capability, they have indicated as well in a statement that they have several new weapons that they are prepared to use if Israel responds and attacks them again. Or maybe for the first time, depending on which narrative you choose to believe. That's the problem as well, right? You don't know what to believe anymore. It's very difficult to know who's telling the truth, who's spinning a yarn, who is outright lying, and how information is being used with partial truth in order to spin up a lie over here. So whose side are you on? There's a new reality out there, and the reality is it's hard to know what's real. At a time when it's probably more important to be able to determine what's real than ever. But how do you even know what's real when, people keep saying we need to learn from our history and so that we don't repeat it. But what I've seen, especially over, say, the past decade, is our history being rewritten. I don't even know what history to believe half the time anymore. Because we're told, that history was a lie. And now we've got, the current history that we have is anti-colonialism, occupation, neoliberal, wokeism, identity politics, with the old colonial figures being torn down, the statues coming down, streets being renamed, our culture being shifted and changed because our history is being rewritten. And now we're supposed to, adopt this new reality based on the new history, because we're told that the old history was a lie. Everything the government's telling you a lie. These people are telling you a lie. Everybody's lying to you. I don't know. Maybe what it comes down to is just trying to figure out what's right and wrong. But even there, it's difficult when you're living in a secular society and we don't have a moral compass anymore by which to gauge or direct our actions. We're in a very dangerous place, an unprecedented place, I would say. But somehow we have to figure things out, and I think it's going to come down to what's right and what's wrong, what's moral and what isn't. And the history, I think sometimes, I've said this before, you can learn from history so that you don't repeat it, but it seems to me like a lot of people are determined to repeat it. And the real key to not repeating it is to, at some point, be prepared to let history go. Let the wars end. Stop reaching back into the past. Because as you do that, you're just rekindling emotions and reopening wounds that in many cases have never really ever healed. We got to find some way to move on. I'll be back.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching. Maverick News. The world is watching.
So I'm going to show you kind of the craziness that's going on out there, all because of Gaza and the Palestinian protests that are happening here. But I want to just come back a little bit for a moment to the economy and the state of the country here in Canada and the U.S. I was down in Costa Rica. I told you a lot of people are thinking of just, they got to get out of Canada. I was kind of there myself for a while during the pandemic. I wondered if I'd ever be able to leave the country again because of the lockdowns and the hard authoritarian sledgehammer that the government was taking to people at the time. But hey, I made it out of the country. I made it back. No issues to speak of, although it was very 1984-ish when they were scanning my face at the airport with new machines that Customs had set up. That was a new experience, I'll tell you. All very digital, all part of that ArriveCan app, which I don't have on my phone. I just used my passport the old-fashioned way, but they scan that now. But is Costa Rica really more affordable? Is there more freedom down there? I have to say, I resented what happened to me at the airport there as I was leaving. I really kind of felt like I got hosed. I'm going to be producing some more material about my experience down there to share my information, the information that I was able to come up with to determine whether people really should move out of Canada and go to a place like Costa Rica to find more freedom and maybe a more affordable place to live. Well, in this particular case, in this one instance here, as I was leaving the country, I'm here at the airport in Costa Rica, and I'm waiting for my flight with my family. And I walked down. I was going to get something to eat at the airport. Now, of course, you expect to pay some inflated prices, right? But it's Costa Rica, so it's supposed to be more affordable. Well, this was my experience when I went to buy a slice, not a whole pizza, a slice of pizza at the airport in Costa Rica.
And I do want to remember this moment.
Here we go.
And I do want to remember this moment. So I'm recording it for everyone to see. Never in my life have I paid so much for a piece of pizza. It's not just a slice of pizza, it's an experience. Let me flip the camera around and share this moment with you. There it is, a player's pizza, a slice of pizza. Yeah, they play you all right. Wow, $18 US.
$18 US for a slice of pizza. Cut in half, so I guess it was $9 for a slice. Times two. Now, it was good, but I've never paid so much for a slice of pizza. I expect to pay some inflated prices at the airport. When I went down there, I thought, what are they going to charge for a slice of pizza? It'd be like, what, $8, $9, $10? Max 12. 18 US. I was like, when the girl at the cash register told me it was $18 US, first I had a heart attack. I died. Then I came back to life. I had an afterlife experience. Refocused. And I was like, I shouldn't pay this. And then I thought, no, I should. I'm going to pay I'm going to give her the two tens. And I okay, here you go. $20. I got $2 back. And I thought, it's worth it. It's worth it so that I could go through the experience of being completely screwed. Oh my. Wow. What's $18 US work out into Canadian? 18 USD to Canadian today is $24.88. Is that even possible? Is that accurate? Come on. That's what it is? I just did the calculation online. I went to there it is. I'll just double check it on another currency converter. Okay, so it's $18. Hang on. Stop that. Okay. $18 US to get $24.88 for a slice of pizza. Come on. Here, I'll show you. This is xe.com. $24.88 Canadian dollars. Can you believe that? I paid it. I paid it. I paid it. Oh my. Oh, wow. Anyway. That's at the airport. But I'll tell you this. Even at the airport in Toronto, I didn't have to pay that kind of coin for anything. You get hosed there, but not like that. Plus, you have to pay, I think it was 35 US to leave the country. They charge you an exit fee. If you don't pay them $35, you ain't leaving. Oh, man. Yeah. Oh, what an experience that was. I didn't find that was more affordable living. I did not find that. Urban Angst says A&W Teen Burger is almost $10 Canadian, no fries. Is that right? Is that right? I'm not surprised. I am not really surprised. It's coming to that, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Yvonne says Rick is still. I didn't eat anything else all day. That was actually in the morning. I'd been. You can tell I'd been up since early. I didn't really get any sleep. And there I am at the airport, and I'm going to go get some pizza. I finally got through all the, the security and everything, and $18. And Yvonne says, yeah, I am hungry. I was hungry because I didn't eat anything from that point until I got all the way back home in Canada. Actually, I stopped partway home because I was too tired to keep driving overnight. Ragin says, I usually take something from the hotel, resort, or Subway. Yeah, I should have gone to the buffet and loaded up and stuffed the stuff in my carry-on or something. But anyway. Yeah, and Urban X says, exit fees are my favorite. Yeah, I know. It's like, you ain't leaving, pal, unless you pay. Pay the ransom on yourself. Yeah. Yeah, it is actually good to be home. And I don't think Canada charges anybody an exit fee. If you want to leave, I think you're just free to leave. Like, I'm not aware of Canada charging anybody an exit fee. So that's something they also do in Cuba. I have been to Cuba as well. And Alonso says, hey, Rick, it's a war on proles? Proles? What's proles? Proletariats. He went to Canada. Shaunavision says he went to Costa Rica and is back in Canada. That's right. Yes, I did. In case somebody's just tuning in, I did go to Costa Rica, and I just got back today. I just got back. And here I am sitting in the chair again, doing the thing with you guys. Yeah, Sandy says, glad you're home. I'm glad to be home, Sandy. How was it? I was asked. Well, Costa Rica, an interesting country from what I saw. I did talk a bit about it while I was down there, and I'll have more to say about it in the nights ahead. I shot some video while I was there. I'll share some of that with you, and a bunch of things that I found there. I found that they have $18 pizza at the airport. Not that I'm fixated or bitter about it or anything. Holy smokes. Yeah. Nice beach. Water was nice. It was warm. At times it got really windy. And I'll get into whether I would actually want to move there on another broadcast. We won't get into too much of that here tonight because we have to talk about other things like these protests that have been going on in Canada and the U.S., these pro-Palestinian protests. Now here's the Kennedy Expressway at O'Hare International Airport in Chicago. Blocked. Pro-Palestinian protesters. This is ramping up, folks. It's getting serious. Very serious. Let me show you what's going on. has been going on. This is just this is a pretty fresh video. Here we go in Chicago at the airport.
No traffic's bad when people are literally sitting on top of their cars and walking to the airport.
Because they're blocked.
Oh, there's a protest.
Uh-huh.
That's annoying.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of people walking right now.
I think I see you at the gate. You have a backpack. Is it gray?
So there's that. There's that. And then we've got similar kinds of things happening in Canada, right here on the home front. Connie Masad out there doing her thing. Let me share just a little bit of her work from today. These protests, I mean, in a way, I was, somebody said to me, why do you cover more of this stuff? And this is real news. And I'm kind of like, well, yeah. But at the same time, it's like, it's not just so much that it's news, it's just Tuesday. Just a normal Tuesday in Canada now because you've got this going on. More protests. Protesters dressed in black bloc during railway blockade at Dundas and DuPont. This is in Toronto. This is what's going on. Pro-Palestinian protesters in Toronto tonight, blockading railway crossing, and we also have police now showing up. And I don't know where this is going to go, but I don't know. Every day it feels like we're getting closer and closer to serious confrontation between police and these pro-Palestinian protesters. Depends on which side of the issue you're on. Whose team are you on? Are you in favor of the cops going in and doing something or not? Are the cops using a heavy hand would they be using a heavy hand clearing the protesters off the railroad tracks so that they stop blocking trains or highways, preventing people from getting to airports? Or are the cops being heavy-handed? Is it better for them to do nothing? Where are we at with all that? I don't know. Depends on which team you're on. The people are always against the cops taking action if it's a cause that they're in favor of. And Zachary Tisdale posts this tonight on the reposts this from the Hub, saying the Islamists will turn on the communists the second they're no longer useful. Indeed, I have been saying that what we are seeing is convergence, political convergence, the joining of the communists and the fascists, or in this case the Islamists and the communists. And some would argue that the Islamists hold some far-right, maybe even fascistic political ideology incorporated into their belief system. That's where I come up with the communofascistic, communofascists. Indeed, that's what we have. That is what's going on right now. But is that an alliance that ultimately would hold? I don't know. This was, again, this is a video imagery from Kareem Assad, again, out there doing her thing. As always, doing a great job covering these protests. Toronto. Are you hearing what they're saying? Colonialism, first word in that clip. Then they're saying free Palestine. And then they say free Turtle Island. Do you know what Turtle Island is? Turtle Island is like all of North America and South America and a bunch of other stuff. It's where we live. We are the occupiers. See? Well, who would they free Turtle Island from? Us. Anybody who moved here, I guess. In particular, the colonialists, the colonizers, the occupiers. Same ideology. Same thing. Applying the same logic, the same ideology, the same political message. In Palestine, it's right here too. So I don't know where that goes, folks. Don't know where that goes. Makes me nervous, to be quite honest, to hear that chant. It can only mean one thing, and it means what it means. It means what they're saying, and I don't think they're joking. Free Palestine. Look what's going on in Gaza now. Free Turtle Island. That's right here. So what does that look like? What else do I have to say to just... I've been talking about this for the last... on this program, like the last couple of years now. Better come up with a solution. Hopefully that isn't violent. That allows us to live together, or we're going to be in a pretty tough situation here. All the way around. Steve says it goes ugly, Rick. Yeah, I mean, Steve, I get it, man. I'm worried about it. I think we all need to be worried about it and focused on it. And I think people, honestly, are asleep. They don't even... I think you have a lot of people out there joining in this chanting, saying, free Turtle Island, not realizing that it's aimed right at them, us, you, anybody who's ever moved here who isn't indigenous, native, Indian, whatever phrase you want to use. I don't even want to get into that, what's the right phrase or politically correct term to use, or whatever. Who are they referring to? They're talking about the first people in the land, giving it back, all of it. Free Turtle Island. Poets Market says Canada is at civil war right now. It feels like we're being forced into it. Determined some people are to push us right into that. Merrick Butler says, 2 years. I don't know if you guys remember, especially, when I was talking about all that stuff way back at Winnipeg. I was really bringing that up to the surface. I was trying to explain it. UNDRIP, colonialism, all these things. I've been talking about it for a long time. And now it's out there in the streets. It's out there, man. I just... I don't know. In my opinion, we have to find a way to live together because we're too mixed. We have, whether we like it or not, the country has changed. The demographics have changed. I can tell you, just coming through that airport in Toronto in this past day, you go up to Toronto and you walk around, and it's not like Toronto in the 1970s. And I'll tell you this, as much as people want to just turn back the hands of time, you can't do it. This country has forever changed. It's already happened. There's no turning it back. And if we try to turn the hands back, it is not going to end well. We have to find a way to move forward so that we can all live together in a peaceful way, which I think we can. But if we don't, Steve's right. It'll get bad. It'll get real bad. I really don't want it to go there, man. But I'm one little guy with one little voice sitting in this chair. I've been trying to tell people for the past 2 years, and all I've really seen happen is extreme polarization. People sucked to this side or that side or over here. And it's like people want to fight. And the people who want to fight code their language, and they cloak it and they mask it. And you're getting more and more radicalization even all the way around. Now you have protests in the streets. You've got railways being blocked tonight. You've got highways being blocked. A lot of other people want to block infrastructure too for other reasons. It's not good. The one thing I can say, though, that maybe gives us a little bit of hope, and Raging Against the Machine says they want to keep pumping more in, though, Rick. Yeah, we are. I know, man. I know. And, that the problem is that as more and more people come in, and I'm not talking about the racial issues or any of that stuff, it's just sheer numbers, right? If you just massive numbers of new people coming into the country, and you can't take care of people, you can't provide, if your system and your economy can't provide a decent standard of living for people and the resources that they need to survive, people will find ways to survive, and they will become resentful and angry, and then things are going to get bad. So, that's what I've been saying too. We need to handle this stuff responsibly, and JT is not doing that. This budget tonight doesn't do that. It's like they're blind. They don't care. They're just on the agenda, and they've got their foot on the accelerator, and they're like, yeah, let's drive 150 miles an hour, and to hell with it. Doesn't matter if the healthcare system breaks under the strain. Screw it! Let's go! Oh, wow. So we get what we have. Hopefully people vote in the right way in the next election. And hopefully we get real effective change. Yeah. Alonzo says nobody works no more. It's not worth it. Pays slave labor. Well, I wouldn't. In some cases, that's true. If you're at the low end of the socioeconomic spectrum, yeah. If you're working for minimum wage, you're not making a living. Now, if you're driving a truck, I heard Freedom George talking just the other day, saying he's losing $450 a day. And I think he actually drives farm implements or something, is what his job is. So I was calculating that out, and there's a guy who could be making like 120 G's a year, and even with a 50% tax rate, income tax rate, if you put that into RSPs and use the other tax breaks that are available to people for retirement savings and so on, you can leverage that. So you get a capital gain that's supposed to be tax-free ultimately until you take it out at the end. Not a liberal invention as far as I know. A liberal financial tool, no. But anyway, it's all there available to people. So, you can make a decent living if you get a good job. But not everybody can get a good job. And with all the new people coming in, a lot of them are scooping up the low-end jobs because they don't speak the language here, one of the languages. Anyway, you know the issues. This is just not a good situation. And now all this division over what's going on in Gaza. I'm telling you, man, what's going on in Gaza directly related to what's going on here. You just heard the chant on the street. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Free, free, Turtle Island. That's here. That's here. And those people protesting in the streets, a lot of those people look awful familiar to me. Look a whole lot like the Occupy Wall Street kind of people. Oh, it is. Plus new people, plus. But yeah, they're very good at protesting. And if they're not gluing themselves to the road to make a statement on environmentalism, they are out there blocking a railroad, calling for the people of Palestine to be free, and the people of Turtle Island to be free. Yeah. Alonso says there isn't good jobs nowhere. You need about 200 hours per week of entry-level minimum wage jobs to stay above and live comfortable. Yeah, I know you. I mean, with the prices the way they are, you can't really live on a minimum wage job. That's why I keep saying these damn politicians. No, we're gonna increase the minimum wage. Yeah, even then, man, you add another $1, it's still not enough. It's just not enough. Screw the minimum wage. I don't want them to focus on the damn minimum wage. Let's start creating, through good economic policies, an environment that fosters the creation of high-paying jobs in the energy sector. Bring back manufacturing. We can do that. Get people the maximum wage. Get people maximum opportunity. Get the economy growing again. Create real wealth and through productivity and good jobs. Not Mick jobs, good jobs. And, Jagmeet Singh, all he ever talks about is things like rent, renters' rights. Screw that. I want to make so much money for people. I want everybody to make so much money they can buy a house so they don't have to rent. They can build equity over time. Their equity, and not the kind of equity that, they have to hand over to somebody afterward because they feel like they're a victim. I've been victimized. You owe me your equity. It's equitable. You got to turn it over to me because I've been victimized. No, I want the victim, the person who's a victim, to make a crap load of money too through opportunity so that they can get a house too. Everybody should be given the opportunity to make the maximum wage and make the most of themselves, to rise up as an individual and make the most of themselves as an individual. That's what freedom is. That's what true freedom is. A free country is a country that affords everyone opportunity to make the most of themselves, to realize their maximum potential. And by realizing your maximum potential as an individual, you then contribute the maximum to your community, the maximum to your country, by being the best that you can be, by being the most that you can be. And any good government, any government focused on true freedom, is a government that focuses on that, on fostering the development of individuals and investing in you. Our government has it completely freaking upside down. Don't know what else to tell you, but I'll figure it out. And I'll share it with you when we come back.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
So, just to kind of summarize what happened with this federal budget in Canada, who's going to pay? Well, carbon tax rebates for small businesses, I guess, are coming, apparently. The budget says as many as 600,000 small businesses are going to get some sort of share of a $2.5 billion fund that has been created as a result of the carbon tax. Now, you're going to pay an additional $4 per carton on cigarettes, and this all starts tomorrow, on top of the $1.49 that was added on April 1st as part of an automatic inflation adjustment. And you're going to pay more for vaping products. So there's one of your sin taxes, which they always hit in these budgets, these federal budgets. I don't know, what is the going rate for a carton of cigarettes in Canada? I don't smoke, so what is the price of a carton of cigarettes in Ontario? $14 a package for cigarettes? Oh my. Holy Toledo. Wow. Yeah, I don't smoke. Thank goodness for that. A carton, $120 to $136. Some as high as Belvedere filtered tip mild Virginia 20s are $150. And that's going up tomorrow. Oh my, as much as $150 for a carton of cigarettes. At the low end, you're paying like $100. Oh, that's more than gold. Holy Toledo. So what else are we paying for? We're going to pay for, oh my, Canadian pension funds. Wow. So you get a pension fund, they're going to tax your pensions, your pension funds, I guess. Cell phone and internet users, well, they're looking at getting rid of junk fees and blah, blah, blah. Stuff like that, but I already told you it's not going to make a whole lot of difference because you're already paying way, way, way over market value because they've limited competition. And ticket prices for concerts, sporting events. I guess the budget will address some of those issues. And they're going to take measures to crack down on fraudulent sellers. Scalpers, I guess, basically. And this and the like. I don't know. It doesn't look that friendly to the average Canadian. And it's funny, to hear the way Jagmeet Singh talks. The NDP used to be the party of the working class. And yet, really, the policies that I see fall into place now, and you even hear Pierre Poilievre using language that is very pro-blue collar, pro-worker, pro-middle class. And I'd say that the economic policy we've seen from the most recent conservative governments of the recent past also favor the middle class more than, by far, than the liberal government policies have. That's because they come up with all kinds of innovative financial approaches that make it possible for people to end up owning homes. I've seen that over time. Because they create incentives and remove penalties. Instead of trying to directly control things, they use market forces in order to facilitate things. But we will see. We'll see if this even passes. And if it doesn't, we could potentially be into an election. And it doesn't sound like Jagmeet Singh is entirely sold on this. So Jagmeet Singh and the NDP may not ultimately end up supporting this. And if they don't, get ready to cast your ballots in the next federal election in Canada. Now we're hearing tonight as well that Hezbollah has launched new drone attacks against Israel. So we're following that for you this evening as well. We're following these protests. I'll keep an eye on that even through the night. And if there's more to talk about, and I'm sure there will be, we'll get into it more tomorrow. But still no sign yet of retaliation or a strike against Iran by Israel. Although we're told that Israel is still determined to do that and that they have possibly even finished preparatory actions in order to lash out at Iran. And with those hypersonic missiles in play here now, as I showed you in that previous video, it's very destabilizing to the whole thing, this technology. And if Kevin's assessment the other night, Kevin Michelizzi, if his assessment analysis is accurate, then what we might see from Iran as a response to the Israeli response, the next volley, might be a whole lot worse than what we saw that first night, where Iran launched all those drones and all those missiles, and some of those hypersonic missiles got through. Minimal damage. Iran said, don't attack us. As far as we're concerned, it's over with. That's the message that we received. Well, what degree of sincerity is behind any of this on either side? You have to wait and see what they do, not just listen to what they have to say. So the world really is watching tonight. And a lot of people very nervous. While that's going on, we have increased taxes. Well, Axe the Tax protests are going on across the country. And these Axe the Tax protests, well, they're in various locations across Canada, not huge at all. Not getting the kind of numbers out that the organizers had hoped for. But I will leave you with this. These folks were singing a song to Justin Trudeau out in Alberta on the Trans-Canada Highway. This Freedom George video. Let me share this with you.
Knowledge is power, the coffers await. Truth was always too thin now. Just the way that these things go. As instinct either works or fails. Entrenched in earth, row by row. The truth in bones, it hits home. Like foxes claw out of the shit. Rabbits don't dig catacombs. Bite the bullet bit by bit. Bothered by authoritarian states, like an author offered a historian's fate. Books laid to waste for the library's sake. Knowledge is power, the coffers await. Gold at the bottom of the fall. This war of words never gets old. Action speaks loudest of all. The There's fairy tales to be told. Cold at the bottom of the fall. This war of words never gets old. Action speaks loudest of all.
That actually wasn't the song that I wanted to share with you tonight, but it's pretty good too. So, folks, with that, I am going to wrap things up here tonight. If you're inclined, you can support the program by donating at maverickdonations.com. That's the Give, Send, Go. Or you can support us at freedomreporters.com. Please like, share, subscribe. If you haven't, if you haven't liked, shared, subscribed, please consider subscribing over on Rumble. That's real important to us. I appreciate you considering doing that. And you can also subscribe on YouTube. Hit the notification bell if you do. And then you'll receive notifications every time we put out a video. So, I'm back. It was a bit of a struggle just to kind of get dialed into all the information here today. Super duper busy and haven't slept really very much in the last 2 days. So I'm going to wrap her up here tonight, and I'll be back tomorrow night. Either 6 or 7. It depends on how things go. I have to get things back into a proper groove here for you folks, but I will be back tomorrow night. And we'll keep fighting for freedom together. On the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.